Hey everyone! Today we're going to be covering how I painted Squig Skin. Squig Skin, try and say that 5 times. It's a fairly simple process where I layer on the colours and then I gradually, at later stages, I build up some texture to make it look like muscle fibres. So here are all my mixes. That's a 50-50 mix of Rhinox Hide and Evil Sun Scarlet, a 75-25 mix of more Evil Sun Scarlet again, and 1-9, so 9 parts Evil Sun Scarlet to 1 part Rhinox Hide, and then you got your Evil Suns by itself and a Wild Rider, which we're going to be using as a highlight. So normally I would just do all the mixes on a wet palette, but because it's got quite a lot of surface area, and I won't be painting this all in one chunk either, and I'll try to be recreating the same colours as I've done on the previous squig, I thought I'd make them all up into paint pots just because it would make it more easier for the process. So here's our basic squig. Now all I've done is I've basically sprayed it with a airbrush, and it's just all painted Rhinox Hide at the moment. And I'm just going to start with the first colour. Now you can see underneath that's basically the main next step, which is a 50-50 mix of our base colour and our first kind of highlight, which is our Evil Sun Scarlet. So got a glove on purely because I don't want to put my fingers all over the model and get grease all over it. So I'll just start to do it on the towel. Now this covers everything in this step. This step goes all the way under, even under the, apart from the very darkest recesses. So I know in a future step I'm going to try to angle it so it looks like the light's hitting one side more than another, because the squig is like jumping over its friend. But for this part here, we're just going to basically paint in all of the chunky muscles. So anything you see kind of like a deeper groove, we're just going to leave that for now. And anything like bigger kind of muscles, we're just going to highlight. So around this bit of the leg here, we'll colour that bit in there, but we'll try and leave the darkest recess out there. So this is quite an easy bit, guys. Just basically work your way all the way across the whole entire model. And if you do make any mistakes, you can basically get your Rhinox Hide and you can just line it back in again. So it's quite forgiving. Now I've basically covered the entirety of the model with the 50-50 mix, apart from obviously leaving the deepest recesses. I've basically started painting the opposite side with the 75-25 mix. And you can see I'm starting to basically kind of like hand pick areas that I want to highlight now. Still quite big broad areas that have been highlighted up at this point, but I thought to start on that side because that's where I basically wanted the area to hit. Like from this angle the sun's going to be coming down and lighting up that side of the squig more than the other. So I thought I'd start with that, make it brighter, and then I'll work on the darker sides afterwards, like the underside and whatnot, which we will still be getting a little bit of this highlight, but not much. Like all this top side would be lit up quite brightly, and then these underside bits, yeah, it's basically small little touches. So what I'm going to do now is basically just going to get some paint on the brush and start blocking in some areas. Now I'm not really building any texture or anything. I'm basically just placing the highlights where I think it'd be a bit more brighter where the light will hit. So in these larger kind of chunky segments here as well, I'm going to basically colour those in now. So we're still just blocking in colour, guys. We're not really doing much else. So say this bit here as well, it gets a bit more brighter. And kind of hand picking where we want our highlights to be. Don't worry about making mistakes now, guys, because this part's like really forgiving because we're at like a kind of halfway point where we can use a lot of the darker tones to bring it back down again. So if you do make any mistakes, just get the colour before and you can just back shade it back down again. We're just going to basically do bits on the face as well. Like the bits on the face are really nice for this model because you can really push a contrast on them with the deeper recesses, which is a really good focal point for most models. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to skip ahead again in a second, and I'm basically just going to colour in all the little bits where I kind of feel like the next stage should go on. Cool, so we're just going to skip ahead, and now I've basically painted the entirety of the whole model, that step now. You can see it's really made it quite bright, or definitely brighter than the last step anyway, and You can see the underside where I basically left it quite dark on one side because it's going to be positioned at that angle. So this next step now is where we're going to start to make it a bit more interesting. We're going to start to build up a bit of a muscle texture onto it. So the big chunky parts of the model, I can show you on this example here. This is basically all going to be done with the 1 part to 9 part mix. We can actually start to build some actual kind of like, texture and muscle. So we're going to build up a series of like smaller lines on the really small areas, and the large chunky areas we're still going to color the main segment in, but we're going to leave out some striations and lines on the bottoms and tops of the bigger chunkier muscles. Then the next highlight afterwards, we can basically add in the middle of that again and keep layering it up. So with this mix now, I'm basically just working down the legs and basically building those lines in again all the way down to the base. See, just a little touch there and that'd be more than enough. And then we're basically going to go over each one of the segments now, and this step will really kind of bring the model together a bit more, and also again make it another notch brighter. You can be a lot more selective with where you want to place this now as well, and where you want your highlights to be. And same again in previous steps back, we can always basically shade it down, but it gets a little bit more harder now as well, because as we're building up these different additional details, we can lose a lot of it when we back shade it down. At this point when I was painting it, I just took a look at how the actual muscles looked, what kind of angles they were, how stretched out the skin from the face was, and then I just tried to recreate similar things. So if the muscles going one way, to the left horizontally, then basically you can build up the muscle fibers going that direction, compared to them all being one direction. The face as well, because it was stretched out. I tried to basically build up like layers to make it look like the skin was kind of slightly stretched. With the 1-9 mix now, I'm basically just going to highlight the larger kind of cheek areas. So that's what I've done here. So basically just build up that colour to make it a bit more saturated around the larger chunkier areas, where I just wanted, number one, a bit more attention to be drawn towards, and where obviously I wanted to look like the light was hitting more. So you can see that front part of the model now is quite a bit brighter. I'll continue this down the top half, the back, but the lower segments won't get much of it now, because now I'm basically going to go over to our Evil Sunz Scarlet, finally just by itself, nothing added to it, and we're going to really kind of pick out this last little bits of kind of muscles. Now this is our highlight in a way, because it's quite a bright colour, and the amount of surface area on the squig, we can really overpower it and make it a bit too bright. So yeah, use this bit sparingly, a bit as a highlight. If you're worried about that, you can always thin down the paint slightly as well, just to make it a bit more smoother, so you have a little transition by itself when you're placing it on the model. So all I'm doing now is I'm just going to follow along and basically cover each one of the edges of most of the muscle fibers, and the larger chunky areas I will be basically highlighting the center of. So this part of the leg, the bottom is done, so that's quite cool, and the bit around the cheek I will be kind of like colouring in the middle segment, and then I would basically just get a glaze of a previous colour and just glaze it back down to help blend it in. So now it's all been done with that colour there. It's getting near the end of the actual skin now. You see I've done all the bit around the mouth as well. It's kind of brought it a bit more up now, and the whole colour, the whole kind of thing is kind of tying together, so when the spines are done, the teeth, hopefully it will gel together quite well. So the next couple of little bits, these are all like kind of optional bits now you can add, guys. This is Caliban Green, but what I would do is I'd water that down to a glaze consistency. Probably about 6 parts to 1 part of the actual paint, and then I'll just glaze down certain areas. So say this part here, the muscle, the leg here, I'll be glazing down the bottom part of it just to darken that area and shade it a little bit more. So you can kind of like correct any little minor mistakes you've made throughout the whole entire model and pick areas that you want to be a bit more shaded, like the scales on the back of this guy I did as well, the green, but I put a bit more of the green lined in at the end as well to kind of help have that nice kind of complementary colour working for it as well. That's just an optional, guys, that you can add to it as well, which is quite a cool little thing. And the other bit you can do as well is you can bring it a little bit more brighter as well if you wanted to. So I've got my Wild Rider red as well, which I haven't used yet. You can see I've basically rubbed a bit of the cheek off there, which is annoying. But you can use that to pretty much do like your super final highlight as well, or even to build more kind of striations in the muscle fibers. So yeah, there it is. Now same again, really bright colour, so yeah, use it sparingly. But you can even push it as well if you wanted to go to like Fire Dragon Blight as well. Some small little like spot highlights, which right in the middle of the cheek, like parts around the mouth, or any kind of wrinkles to really kind of bring it out. But that's the main chunk of it done, guys. Hope you liked it today. If you need any help with anything, just send me a PM. Take care.